oil exporters in East Africa. Of course, Uganda is leading the way. And now we are joined by two gentlemen who are in the sectors that do touch on the economy and our day-to-day lives. I'm now joined by David Chesoni, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Car and General, as well as Powell Maimba, who is the Chairman of the Petroleum Institute of East Africa. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Looking at first things first, Kenya trying to say that come next year, September, we are likely to start exporting oil. From where you sit as Chairman of PIEA, what rings into your mind?
Well, exporting oil is a long journey, and there are a number of activities that the government has to put in place. As you say, we've heard from the CS, the production will start at 2,000 barrels per day, and that's quite a small quantity. However, what is important is to start and develop the skills and experience over the time. When that process starts, it's very difficult to stop. If you don't start, then it becomes difficult to learn out of the process. So what goes in my mind is it's a good start for long term, and bear in mind that oil production is a long term. It's not today or tomorrow. It's not 2017. It goes many years.
Are we over ambitious? Because experts are saying we're likely to start by 2020. On the other side, the government is saying next year, September, everything will be ready.
Yeah, look, being ambitious is one of the key things of survival in life. So I don't dispute the government's position. As long as they put the systems and the processes in place of producing the oil and be able to export it, then really time is just a question of discussion.
Maybe let me allow David to jump in. Of course, your line of work is in the automobile industry. Of course, you deal with a lot to do with the big sort of equipment in the car industry. And when we have a vibrant petroleum sector, what does this portend for you as people in that industry?
Well, I think one of the key elements in the motor vehicle industry is what drives engines.
Oh, yes.
And obviously, fuel oil comes into play. In this industry, we have seen that the cost of operating some of equipment has been key in making key decisions in terms of the type of vehicle you drive, and the type of equipment, if you're going to run generators and all that, what you buy. So I think if at all producing oil in Kenya could translate into an actual price benefit, then obviously it will generate an avenue through which we can see a more vibrant economy, because we see that oil is one of the key elements when you are talking about inflation. So actually, if this all comes into play, we definitely see more vibrant economy, goods will be slightly more affordable, and it is generally good for the entire economy.
Perhaps, Maimba, we know that Kenya is a net importer of petroleum products. We imported over 350 billion shillings as of recent statistics. And moving into the near future, when we become this exporter, how will this impact on our import bill?
Well, definitely, if you stop importing and you're producing, the import bill goes down and your balance of payment reverses. So you are exporting. In other words, you are raising more revenue on export income versus importing. So in terms of the economic position, it's going to improve our balance of payment over time. And therefore, the whole bill of 300 billion shillings that go through it is going to be the reversal of the situation.
Interesting. And David, I know you deal a lot with not only the motor vehicles, but also parts. If you have a population that is able to save on the cost of fuel, this technically means that people will have some disposable income when it comes to either pimping up their cars or even buying new cars, as well as you as a company being able to widen your distribution network. What lies ahead for Car and Car General?
Sure. There might not be an immediate translation into people being able to maybe buy more cars and all that kind of stuff. But I think, you know, when you are making a buying decision, as I said earlier, the cost of running obviously is a key element, and it forms a very big part in the buying decision. So in that regards, I think yes, we are likely to see a gradual growth in terms of people buying more cars, maybe. We are likely to see, I mean, we not limit ourselves to cars. We are going to see maybe other people look at other options like buying bikes.
Yeah, motorbikes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that they can ride to work. So there will be obviously a transformation, but it will be gradual. It might not be evident immediately in the short run. Yeah.
Speaking about motorbikes, as a company, what trends are we seeing in Kenya now that we saw the duty on motorbikes actually being lifted?
I think I'll want to correct you there. In the almost 4 or 5 years ago, I think VAT was actually taken off of motorbikes, and we see a significant growth. I think over time, over that period, I think the annual importation of bikes grew up to 144,000.
Oh yes.
And then the VAT was returned, and we saw a steep decline up to almost 90,000. Now, I think the motorcycle industry was on the path to recover in the excess tax.
Oh yes.
The 10,000.
Thanks for that correction.
I think that we are already feeling the impact. And because there's an obvious reaction when price change.
Are you likely to see job cuts from your side?
We do assemble motorcycles in Kenya, and we have a certain volume that makes the threshold for it to be economical for you to assemble. Now, beyond a certain level, if sales will drop beyond a certain level, then it might be uneconomical for us to continue assembling. We haven't felt it yet. We haven't seen it yet. But there's been some impact on it.
Okay.
And because I can assure you that most of the manufacturers have absorbed a bit of it, and it has really hit them hard in terms of margins. And I can assure you that the volumes that we get this year will not be like what we had last year. There will be some drop in it. Yeah.
And Maimba, as we head to wrap up our conversation, I know yesterday PIEA did release some industry statistics, perhaps tying to what is mentioning that there is a possibility of a potential economic slowdown by the fact that we've seen the reintroduction of VAT. From where you sit, looking at the statistics, that perhaps you can just give us a recap on what are the trends looking like?
Well, the industry, as we launched yesterday, the consumption of petroleum products has increased. Last year it was 4.3 billion liters, and this year, the year that's 2014, and 2015 it went to 5.8 billion liters, just about 6 billion liters. That's a huge increase in a period of just about a year. What that means is high consumption and motor vehicles on the road, we're able to travel. And to us as an industry, we see an increase in economic activities, rising from, of course, low oil prices. And again, this can also be tied up to the coming up of the middle income, the middle income generation, and therefore everybody's buying vehicles, and therefore you see the demand increasing. So where we see, looking at the statistics that we released yesterday, we saw quite a substantial increase in the demand for petroleum products. Yes.
Speaking about petroleum products, now that you're seeing a barrel of oil going for about $30, how soon are we likely to see either more drops in the fuel prices for consumers, of course?
Well, look, it's an interesting and some debate, and I think there have been a lot of publications about there should be a 50% drop. Somebody talks about some drop, but the reality is that I'll give you statistics in the world. For every 10% drop in crude, there's only a drop of 1.6% in finished product. And there's no direct correlation between crude and petrol, because crude is a product that will produce many products.
Yeah.
And therefore, you find all those factors happening. I also give another statistic for yourself, is that, and the public, is that the world palm price drop in 2015 equated to 7%. Kenya, in that last quarter, had a 12% drop. And there were only 4 countries which had 4% price drop. So if you start looking at statistics and look at the world palm prices, you start seeing that actually Kenya benefited from the price reduction. And for your information, there are stories like why are palm prices not going down immediately? The situation is that, again, statistics, it takes between 4 and 7 weeks for the response to take place in the world on average. And it can take longer. For example, Kenya, it takes just about 3 weeks, 3 months. Why? Because of where we are in the process. No one buys crude today. So the crude that is being sold today is for refining in the next 3 months. Refineries don't just buy and process. So you find out that there are a lot of dynamics and the activities involved. Another reason is that you have taxes that are in the price buildup. And just about 40% of the price you pay goes to the government as taxes. And therefore, the impact, and they're fixed, they are not in percentage to the price. And therefore, you find out the drop in the crude price may not be a direct impact. But Kenya enjoyed that. Why? Because of the OTS. Open tender has allowed us to respond to the world palm prices equally to anywhere. And that has helped the country as such.
Many thanks. Of course, it seems like it's an endless debate, and being told we've run out of time, but many thanks, gentlemen. We've been speaking there to David Chesoni, Chief Operating Officer, CAN General, as well as Powell Maimba, who is the Chairman of Petroleum Institute of East Africa, sharing with us some interesting statistics on how the petroleum industry is looking like. Well, my name is Abiagina, and I'll hand over to Joy Doreen.
And that great conversation on how the market is doing regarding petroleum, cars and parts. We now winds up actually our edition of Business Today, but I'll be back at about 3:30 p.m. to give you more business updates. Do stay with us. Coming up next is News Hour, but for more you can log on to our website, ktnnews.com or ktn.co.ke.